I'm excited to welcome today's guest to the COO Solution Podcast, Samantha Prestidge. Samantha is the founder of OXO Business Services and works with founder-led businesses and companies to help them get out of their own way and accomplish more impactful work. Her approach is refreshingly direct. She helps founders and CEOs simplify how they work, build reliable teams, and step into real management without overcomplicating things. She does this through US-based virtual assistant support, flat fee recruiting, and strategic integration. What I love about Samantha's philosophy is that it aligns deeply with what we do here at the COO Solution, and she is not here to babysit founders or hand them a checklist. She is here to help them delegate with confidence, hire the right people, and build a business that does not depend on the founder for every single decision. And so today we're talking about delegation, hiring, and the mindset shift that changes everything for a founder who is ready to actually let go. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Derek Fredrickson. Welcome to the COO Solution Podcast, the show for business owners and visionary leaders who want to scale with clarity, confidence, and the right support. For over 16 years, I've been in the trenches as a fractional COO, Chief Operating Officer, helping entrepreneurs align their teams, streamline operations, and remove bottlenecks that slow growth. I understand the challenges, feeling overwhelmed, stretched too thin, or uncertain about how to scale without burning out. I've helped business owners move from chaos to clarity, creating businesses that run smoothly and grow and scale. Each week, I'll bring you real-world insights, proven strategies, and practical solutions to help you step into your highest role as a leader. Whether it's optimizing your team, strengthening accountability, or building the right systems for growth, this podcast is here to support you in scaling smarter. So if you're ready to create a business that thrives without requiring more of you, let's get started. Hey there, everybody. It's Derek Fredrickson here, founder of the COO Solution and the COO Solution Podcast, and very excited for our episode today with our guest, Samantha Prestidge. Samantha, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
We're looking forward to diving in. You and I have a lot in common because we're going to be talking a lot about delegation and getting support in your business today and virtual assistants and providing that extra layer of execution and implementation for founders and CEOs in the companies that we work with. And so we're going to just go ahead and dive right in. And I would love to hear from you, Samantha, in your world. We work with founders, we work with CEOs. I would love to kind of start with when you work with the founder CEO in the company, providing that assistant level support and kind of delegation. What is a common theme? What is the one thing that you see with most founders that is maybe holding everything back that maybe they know is holding them back, or maybe they don't know that's holding them back? What's your perspective on that when you start to work with a client?
Yeah, okay, great question. Let me give some context or perspective there to where the types of people I'm usually working with. So I say I like to work with the founders who like to be busy, right? So they don't respond to the concept of like being burnt out. They're like, of course I want to work 50 hours a week. It's fine. Like the only reason they might slow down is if they have kids. And then they're like, I want to go to their soccer game or I want to have dinner with them. But besides that, they like to work, right? So I think that's an important piece of context, right? For the kind of people I'm working with. Most often what I see is like, they might think about handing off low level tasks, but usually it's like, I know I need help. I just don't know what I need help with. Really, it's because they haven't thought through what they want their role as the founder to look like in the business. And I'm sure you see this because you're introducing maybe their first high level ops partner as their frac COO, right? And so for the first time in their business, someone's getting into the messy, dirty details and asking those tough questions, and where they feel like they've gone to the principal's office, right? And they're like, no one's asked me that before. Like, I don't know how I do this. I don't know why I made this decision, right? And so we have to start thinking through things differently, mostly from that context of, okay, where do you want to play in your business? And what does that really look like? If you took away the fancy vision statement, the one that you put on your website that makes it sound cool, and you just thought about your actual vision for like how you want to feel in your business and what does that look like? And that can get uncomfortable for some founders, but that's where we have to start with delegation.
Yeah, I sometimes call it the messy middle, right? Like kind of opening the hood of the business and with no judgment, looking at what's working, what's not working. You have to assess before you say, do less or delegate this or delegate that. And so to take that a step further, when you work with founders around the concept of delegation, you have this idea of the difference between delegating a task and delegating an outcome. Talk to us a little bit about that distinction, if you could.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back and pick on what I said about low-level tasks, which there are low-level tasks that can have high impact, right? So low-level doesn't mean that it's like not important in the business. It just is something that doesn't require you as the founder, right? But oftentimes people think through like a checklist of, okay, I want to delegate these tasks. Let's try to hand that off. But when we don't give the expectations around that, when we don't give the clear big picture for it, then the decisions around that task still kind of live in your head.
Mm-hmm.
You still are then dictating, this is how I want this to get done. And you kind of get in this trap of like, oh crap, do I need 100 SOPs in my business before I hire somebody? And it's like, no, you don't, but you do need clarity. So I say, delegate the outcome. And so when we build out a job description, I say, okay, you want them to do this task in this kind of way so that it like achieves this result. And then you don't have to think about it. So I think through like, what would they need access to? Or what would your assistant or whoever the team member is needs to know the back, like all that information that's in your head. What do they need to know so that you don't have to touch this task? You don't have to think about this decision, except maybe like a final approval on something. So think through those big level outcomes. And so something else I pick on here is, what's like the value statement of that role for that assistant or whoever the team member is. And a lot of times founders will say, oh, well, if I delegate these low level tasks or I get this admin off my plate, then I have time for more business development tasks. And it's not a value statement because none of those things actually connect, right? Yeah. And also I'm assuming you haven't actually thought through what business development means for you. So you're just going to go burn yourself out on one-on-one networking, which sucks, right? So like I say, again, like connect it to the business, the big picture. When this person is successful in this role, that means this thing for the business. So if I took my own ops assistant, for example, I'd say like, if she's successful in this whole laundry list of tasks, that would result in a more white glove experience for our clients, which would mean higher retention and likely more referrals, right? So there's a specific business outcome that comes from her doing those tasks. And yeah, I do have more time to go play around in my business, go do business development, go come up with new ideas, but that's just a byproduct of her kicking ass in this role.
I get it. I want to take a step back. Sometimes I love to ask the question, which is, so you have a very successful virtual assistant company that provides VA services. We'll talk about that in a moment, which I firmly believe in. In addition to the work that we as COOs provide, there's also a supplementary benefit when you have a really well-skilled, experienced, highly expertised VA that can do that kind of day-to-day admin, implementation, and everything else. But I want to go back a step behind and say, oftentimes on the show, I ask you guys, why this topic for you and like maybe how you got into it and why you feel this is very relevant and current now in terms of this conversation that we're having today.
I have this weird background in people and process, which I know is like the cringiest, most common thing that anyone in strategy or business coaching says. It's like people, process, and profit, right? But that really is kind of my background. So my first office job was in a high volume staffing agency. And so I very quickly went from receptionist to recruiter to personnel supervisor and handling accounts. And so I would manage warehouse accounts and call center accounts. Eventually I did higher level stuff too, right? But that's where the bulk of my time was, which meant, hey, I'm interviewing, like I'm doing the grunt work, right? I'm the newbie. So I'm interviewing somewhere between 30 to 50 people a day, 5 days a week, working like 7:30 to 6:30. You get to learn a lot. You learn a lot when you interview that many people. And then it's like, okay, this is what I'm seeing on the resume. Here's what I'm seeing in like their interview answers. Here's what the clients are saying they need. And like, I also understanding like, hey, this is a warehouse that needs like just shipping and like just finding the inventory in the box. This is a warehouse where like the person eventually is going to learn to make, I don't know the right term. It's not LED signs, but like 7-Eleven, like the signs, right? Like
I think
that's
it's LED.
A different kind of, okay. Whoever's a scientist or knows more than I, don't call me out on that. But so, okay, like they have to have a little bit more professionalism, if you could even say that in the warehouse world, and having to know the distinctions between different types of warehouses, right? And like really where do people play the best role and the managers that are there. And so I learned so much in that. And then I went on to do more like executive assisting work. So I know what it takes for a really good assistant. But I also then went on to work in a software company that worked with oil and gas, which also, if you ever want to feel dumb in your life, work in an office that everybody is a software engineer before AI or a geophysicist. And every word you hear will go over your head. So here's me, the lowly little admin project manager person, like, how do I convince these people that I'm kind of smart? But anyway, so they had a really big focus on Lean Six Sigma. And so I got an introduction to that world and like, what does process improvement and efficiency really look like? What are the differences of like corporate processes and resources versus the agility of a small team, a family owned team, which is kind of what I had worked in before. And so it really is this awesome combination of like HR, people, culture, chemistry and vibe of people, and then process. At the end of the day, we just have to get shit done, if I could say that on this show. And like, yeah, we want our culture to feel good, but like we still have to get stuff done. We still have to make money or else no one gets paid and no one has a job. That's my very long-winded answer on like how I have this expertise that feeds into this. And like the short, very boring origin story is this was a COVID baby. I had a baby at the end of 2019. I stayed at home. I was like, I want to get things done. What can I do? I have this cool expertise. So with a 7-month-old in 2020, I was like, let's start a business. And we got into this, right? Yeah. And so if we fast forward to the relevancy of it, well, okay, like we're post-COVID, right? A lot more people are working remotely. There's a lot of hype around AI agents. I've suggested AI to some companies when they're like, I just need someone in my inbox. I'm like, don't pay a human for that.
Okay,
like,
great.
Save your budget for high impact work, right? But like go get AI to sort your inbox. It's not that difficult. Also, maybe just do 2 filters on your Gmail and bada bing, bada boom, you're done with that, right? I see this relevant because we do see this surge of more remote workers, more remote like online service providers or consultants, even if they are traveling in person to their clients sometimes for workshops and things. A majority of their work is still remote, right? But they need access to the type of support that maybe a corporate team would have, that level of like admin that just knows the back end, but they don't want to pay a full-time employee, right? And so there's that kind of relevancy piece.
Okay, got it. I love what you shared because I think when we talked before, there's a part of like, yes, process. Like we can over process to the nth degree where we're then kind of like getting into the weeds, like we're getting into like the rabbit hole versus just like simplifying work. Like what needs to get done? How do you prioritize? Knowing that it's a combination of process and simplification with the work getting done. When it comes back to delegation, working with the founder or working with the team, let's talk about trust because as you've experienced, and I know this as well, is that at any level, there's the relinquishing control, even if it's something as simple as somebody checking their inbox or managing their calendar. Like the letting go aspect of founders is something that all of our clients can relate to in one way or the other. How do you kind of bridge the gap between you are here to serve, you're here to support with simplifying the work, delegation process, all of that, but it means you have to let go. It means you need to trust. It means you need to give control for somebody to do what they can do, maybe even better than the founder can do themselves. So talk to us a little bit about the trust factor.
Yeah, I heard someone a few years ago kind of describe this in a really cool way of minimizing the blast radius. Often I say, okay, here's this whole job description for an assistant. Let's assume like you've got maybe 10 or 15 hours a week that you need this assistant to do. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we start out at like 5 hours or 7 hours a week and like we stagger what they're going to take on so that they can do this like 1 or 2 things really well and then keep adding on to that. What is something that's still valuable, that still alleviates like things from your to-do list, gives you back your time, but maybe it doesn't have like, if they get it wrong, it's not going to have like detrimental effects to your business, right? On top of that, that's like the tactical part of it. If we go back to, okay, have we given clear expectations and outcomes and have we figured out what you as the founder want to focus on? Because if you don't know what those things are, then you're like tug of war. Yeah. I'm like, I have a rope. I'm like, yeah, it's like a tug of war of like, I want to hand this over, but like, I kind of want to take it back. And you're going to micromanage, you're going to overthink. Are they doing it exactly the way that I would do it? Versus like, hey, like I've now filled my time with all this other stuff that I actually want to do in my business. So if they get 5% of this thing wrong or slightly different than I would do it, it's okay because look at all this other cool stuff that I've done. And they've still maybe gotten 95% of it correct because I told them what the outcome was that I wanted, right? And so like even with processes, if you're building out an SOP, which I'm not hating on SOPs, I do think they can be helpful, okay? I just think they have a time and a place for them. But like simplify the heck out of your process. At the end of the day, it's I have this SOP so that someone can do this task to this level or this standard. And the reason I want it at this standard is so that it could, I don't know, have a better client experience or have more consistency in our content or whatever the outcome is, right? And so if I know that outcome, then I can say, or I can question parts of the process. Do I need to do this? Do I need data entry here? Do these metrics or KPIs matter? I have a beef with KPIs. I have a beef with them. I'm like, why? Like,
you're knocking on us because we're all about SOPs and KPIs. You're knocking, yeah. Okay, go ahead. What's the beef?
No, okay. Again, no. They have a time and a place. If you have a COO in your business, I'm going to assume, Derek, because that I know you, that you guys do really great work. And so if you're doing really great work, then whatever you're doing is connected back to a strategy. It's connected back to like a big picture, right? But you get these founders sometimes that are like, they read this business book or they followed this LinkedIn thing. So now they're trying to do their best with the information they have. And again, I'm saying you're trying to do your best. I'm not judging them. They're doing tactical things without the strategy. It's like, okay, you want this VA to update this spreadsheet with all these KPIs. Do you look at these freaking KPIs? What decisions do you make with these metrics? Like, that's what I'm knocking on.
That's the rub. That's a great point because I think you touched on a few things with the founders and the CEOs that we work with. You know, they want process to some extent. They want structure. They want simplification. They want SOPs. They want KPIs. They don't want to be the one to do it, right? Because they're not wired for it. It's not how they naturally take action. It's not their strength. So it's one of those things that they like the idea of it, but they don't love the idea of them going ahead and doing it. And I think especially to your point on KPIs, which is a great one. Yeah, it's one of the things that we do look at when we work with a client is say, you know, what's the strategic roadmap? What's the North Star? What's the goal? Is it a 90-day goal? Is it a 12-month goal? Is it a 5-year goal to exit? Whatever that might be. Reverse engineer, what do we need to be doing now in order to have really good progress and momentum to hit those goals? And part of that is tracking KPIs, but not having somebody put a number on a spreadsheet just for the sake of putting a number on the spreadsheet when there's no ownership, there's no accountability, there's no reflection that says, oh, we should be getting 10 leads a week and last week we only got 1. Okay, but I entered the number, my job is done, I move on to the next thing. Like, no. Like, what's the insight? What's the action? What's the to-do? So there's that level of ownership and accountability, whether it's creating process, creating SOPs that are actually going to move the needle, simplify the work, and especially for KPIs and metrics so the founder can see and get a pulse of the business. Okay, this is what's working. Great. Do more of that. This is what's not working. Great. Who owns that number? And what are we doing about that? And that's where I think that bridge of the COO to the founder, but also in the execution layer, things are running more smoothly on the day-to-day basis. Got it.
Let me also say, anything that I make fun of is probably dumb decisions I've made in the past, okay? I've had a ridiculously large spreadsheet. Like, I've tracked the number of LinkedIn connections I had in a week.
I do that. Why? I'm guilty.
Like, for me, like, I'm not doing anything with that information.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why am I tracking this? It's because at some point I thought, oh, I would be like a grown-up business owner if I tracked this number and like I would then make these decisions based off of it. But that never happened because it wasn't relevant to my goals, right? And so if your goal is to grow to a certain network size or to get to a certain engagement impression rate on LinkedIn, cool, track those numbers. That's super important. At that time, that's not what my goals were focused on. And yet I was like, let me grow up and like sound cool because I have this KPI.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know,
I get it.
Not needed. Yeah.
I have a funny story. So when I was doing fractional COO work, I was working with a number of different clients. And I'm a firm believer in scorecards, dashboards, and everything else. So I love spreadsheet. Yes. I can spreadsheet anything. And my kids would sometimes make a joke because they would come home from school and they would come into dad's office and they would see my computer and they would always a spreadsheet. Or they would see something like Asana, which looks like a spreadsheet. And they're like, what does your dad do for it? This is when they're younger. They know now. Uh-huh. My daughter works with me, so she definitely knows what I do. But they would kind of say like, what do you do for work? Do you just do spreadsheets? Is that what you do? Like you just have spreadsheets open on your computer all day?
You just make lists all day, lists and numbers.
It's a lot more than that. Because then I would run like a level 10 meeting in EOS world with the leadership team. And I would have the spreadsheet. And I would be like, this week, on track, off track, we're off track. Here's why. Who owns it? What are we going to do? So there's the accountability part that's really, really tied to that. So I love that. I want to go back. So you mentioned this example, which I loved, about kind of utilizing AI with kind of virtual assistant and delegation and everything else. And you said, for example, don't hire an assistant to like manage your inbox. Like that is something that AI can do. We could have a whole other conversation on AI because it's changing every single day. But from your perspective, using that case as an example, where do you draw the distinction that says, yes, this is something that AI can automate or streamline or simplify or just make easier, versus this is more of a human component that we really want to, I don't say leverage, but utilize because it's going to move the needle further in terms of simplification of the work, et cetera. How do you draw that line?
Yeah, I sound like a broken record here, but it's going to go back to like tasks and outcomes, right? So if you as the founder are still okay owning whatever decisions happen with these tasks, cool. You can use AI to then like help get those tasks done faster. At the end of the day, you still have to own and manage whatever that AI agent is, whatever the instructions are for that, and whatever like ultimate outcome deliverable from those tasks are. So we do have some clients that like they don't ever want to be in their freaking inbox, like especially if they're construction, like they want to be in the field or they want to be with their employees and whatever. And so like we can use AI to help clean up their inbox, but then there's still a human element of like, okay, this needs to be responded to, or like I know from their calendar that he's at this job site today, this email came through, like let me send a quick text or call. So that's how that can work. If you say like, okay, as a founder, here's the job description I want, here's where I want to play in the business, because I'm all about it can be simple and fun and profitable.
I love the play theme here. Our audience will resonate with that. Yeah, because they like joy, they like excitement, they like fun.
Yeah, if you want to hate your job, go back to the corporate world, but like you've got a business, even though it's stressful, it can be fun, right? I firmly believe that. If you say, here's where I want to play in the business, here's where I don't want to play. I don't want my VA to maybe waste time on certain tasks. Like maybe I have a limited budget. Maybe I only have 5 hours a week for my budget that my VA can use. Okay, so how can we make them more efficient? So then that 5 hours is low level, but super high impact. And then here are the decisions and outcomes that they own, or that they collaborate with me on. And I don't have to think so much about this. Like that mental load is not there because they're handling it. And so that's where I would draw the line there.
I think one of the themes that's coming throughout, and I'm assuming that our audience knows this, but I'm just going to clarify it just so it's very, very clear. And I'd love for you to chime in as well. So what we're talking about here is delegation. We're talking about getting support in your business. We're talking about you, the founder, CEO, getting out of the things that you're doing that are not the best use of your time, right? And so call it an executive assistant, an ops assistant, a VA, a COO, whatever it might be. This is the concept of there are activities and tasks and time being spent where there's somebody else or some other thing that can be doing it more efficiently, so quicker, and more effectively, which means they could do it better because in some cases, those tasks and activities that you're doing are not your strong suit. You don't love doing them. They're not fun. It's not joy. It's not play. So guess what? You avoid it. You distract. You drag your feet. When you go to do it, if you stink at it, you're actually costing your business money. So the idea here, just to reframe it for the audience at a high level, very practically speaking, is that when you bring in a resource that you are outlaying in terms of the investment for them to do the work that you no longer have to do, the investment comes back. That's why I say investment. It's not a cost. It's not an expense. You're investing back into your time by the fact that you're paying somebody like a virtual assistant X amount per hour for a certain amount of hours for a certain amount of weeks, et cetera, per month for them to handle and manage all these activities. And then you get your time back. And if you do the math, this is the ROI, and say, what is your dollar value per hour, and what could you be doing back into the business that's a better use of that time? That could be business development, focusing on the vision, networking, whatever that might be. I don't take credit for this expression, but my wife uses this all the time. She's like, you could go and take a nap, or you could go eat chocolates on the beach. It's up to you to use that time as you want. But if you reinvest that time into exponential growth activities that are going to move the needle for your business and are more aligned in how a CEO founder should be thinking and working, that's the needle mover for the business. So it's an investment, not a cost. And the investment back is time, which you can then reinvest to make more money because you're paying less than what you're getting back in return for that time that's being used elsewhere. Would you say something similar, or how would you contradict or supplement that?
I'd say something similar, but I want to pick on a few few things and rather just kind of expand with clarification. So I don't think I disagree, but a few things. First off, like you are making a good point of like, it does come back to the numbers, right? Like I said at the beginning, like I'm all about people feeling good in the business, but you still got to get stuff done. The business still has to make money. If we look at costs, sometimes then we say like, if we go back to the really crappy goal connection of like this VA handles these tasks, so I have more time for business development. Well, we don't work with clients who don't have strong sales systems. You're just putting way too much pressure on a non-revenue generating role. At some point have this revenue ROI for you. We have clients that they've just broken 6 figures or something. They're not like rolling in dough, but they do have like some stability to their leads or their projects. Like maybe their projects are 12-month term things, right? So there's some stability there. I'd put emphasis on if you figure out your sales stuff first. I'm not going to be the ops person or admin person that's like, we're so important. Like, no, we're not the most important. Like your sales are most important, right? And so then the other thing that I would pick on is going back to what your hourly rate is. And I pick on that because that framework, that mindset does work for some people. For other people, it doesn't land. For me, it didn't land because I was like, well, here's my hourly rate. When I have a project or when a client works with me, here's what I charge. However, I'm not actually billing the business that amount. That framework never resonated for me, but there are some people that it does, right? Because for me, I'm like, well, it's still $0. Like me doing the work means like 100% profit margin on something. And so that's what I go back to, like, okay, what are the things for the business that I'm maybe not great at or I can't be consistent at anymore? So let's pick on my ops assistant, for example, again. There were some data entry errors that were happening because I just didn't have the time to be super consistent and accurate with things. There were some small VA performance issues that usually I would have caught earlier on, trained the VA on, or helped the client communicate better that were getting missed. And so there was a legitimate cost that was happening on the business, right? And so now my assistant handling those things, keeping an eye on those things, keeps that cost or minimizes that risk for me, right? Which does allow other areas to grow, which does allow for higher profit margin, retention, referral, all that stuff. That's why I have to tie her job description to some kind of business goal. It cannot be just tied to what's the time I'm getting back in my day, just because if that's how my brain worked at that time.
I totally get that. That's a great distinction. And I think it makes complete sense. It's tying it back to the goal as opposed to just like the ROI of the cost piece. I think what I like about this analogy is that everyone started somewhere. You know, our clients, multiple 7, multiple 8 figures, they remember the very first time that they hired somebody and this thought process rolled into their mind, which is like, I have to hire somebody, I have to pay this person, it's going to cost me. Like it's the mindset shift, which is you are not actually paying money, or it's not a cost, it's not an expense, it's an investment. And when you make that investment and get that back tied to a goal, that's where things really start to shift. So you're kind of cascading that. And of course, like you said, it's built up over time in terms of trust and being able to rely on others and rely on the process and those that are coming to you, kind of batteries included of what they know how to do and do it very, very well, which I know we talked about once before. I love that expression. So I get it. So here's the next part. Founders are listening to this. We're like, okay, I don't have an assistant. I don't have a VA. Maybe I have an executive assistant, or maybe I'm thinking more about where I can get additional support in the day-to-day of my business. Then they're going to go and they're going to maybe write a job description. They're going to maybe go hire on their own. They're going to figure out what they need to go and do about that. Is that a good approach? Like, we'll get to how you guys operate, but I think that's usually like, okay, I need to find that person. Let me go find, hire, recruit, train, onboard that person. Is that the right approach, or is there a different approach? Or like, what happens when founders go down that path? Let's start there.
Let's go back to like, we like to be simple and fun, right, Derek? And so even in like you describing that process, like you took a heavy sigh with that, right? And so for most people, that does not sound fun. I love interviewing people, and still there's parts of that process that I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do it, right? Super simple framework that I like to work with. And if you've got someone from Derek on your team, they can walk you through this, right? Which is super awesome. And like, I would also say like, you shouldn't have a frac COO without having an assistant. And that doesn't mean the assistant has to come first, but like, I'm assuming maybe if someone hasn't had an assistant, they've blurred the lines and like, oh, like my COO can go execute on these things. And your COO is like, no, I will not.
Like, or vice versa, right? Yeah. You're asking your executive assistant to think big picture and strategy. And they're like, but I'm managing the office, or something like that.
Exactly. Like they can come up with ideas, they can have initiative, but like initiative for their lane. So I like to say, map it, keep it, delegate it. So map it out. If you've done EOS or you've done some other kind of simple business model, everything breaks down into 3 buckets ultimately. How you get your clients, how your clients pay you, and how you do the thing that you sold, right? So sales, cash, and ops. And so just map out the business and then say, okay, from here, here's where I want to play in the business. So I love to do this on a Canva whiteboard. If you're an in-person kind of person, you can have like your flip chart sticky notes and have like a serial killer wall.
Or mind map or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. Like you could look crazy, get the red string across the walls, do it, whatever you need. Then say, okay, here's what I'm going to keep as the founder. Here's what I'm going to keep right now. And then here, what's left over. Okay, I'm going to delegate these things. And from what's left over, does that make sense for it to all be under one person? A lot of our assistants do work as generalists across all those buckets, but sometimes it's like, no, like you do need a marketing strategist in this area, or you do need more of an integrator for these roles. And so not everything is going to fit into one job description, but let's take what does fit together and then say, okay, here are the tasks. And because I've thought through why these tasks matter, then I can now say, okay, I have the outcomes for this. And so I can have on that job description, like this role, like here's the purpose for this role. And then because I know the outcomes, I know this is the kind of person that would do well in this role. So when I do job descriptions, I never put requirements. I always say, this role is a fit for you if, and I list out very specifically. And then I say, this role is not a fit for you if like these things are true for you.
Yeah.
Like, and we call that out. And that's a much easier way to go about job description, posting, and then interviewing those people.
I call it hiring copy. We have sales copy, right? But hiring copy, it's going to attract those that really resonate because this is the role for you if, and it's going to repel or unattract those that don't align with that. And there are plenty of people out there that love any type of work in the right type of way, but it has to be positioned. I love what you shared about starting, what's the outcome, like starting with the end goal in mind. And then this is what we do as well, like reverse engineer and be like, okay, this is the kind of expectations. I know not really requirements, but this is what is expected and what they're going to align to and what they get excited about. And then being able to see that first from the founder perspective, like I want to spend more time in client acquisition. I want to spend more time in partnerships, or maybe I'm still involved in the delivery. That's fine. Whatever it is that you want to do that you feel is going to be in your zone of genius, that's going to really contribute to the bottom line. But then what are those other things that might be getting in the way, and start with that and then find the people to come in to do that. I know also that with your virtual assistant company, which we'll talk about in a moment, you work primarily or maybe exclusively with US-based virtual assistants.
Yes.
And so we talked about that once before, but in today's world, there's a lot of people that are looking to do things, faster, cheaper, et cetera. And there's, offshore and different areas. What's the rationale, or what's your thinking and feeling around US-based assistance in terms of what you provide for your service?
Yeah. And so let me first say, I'm not going to knock international. It is difficult to find your fit internationally if you're not working with a really good agency. And there's a lot of bad agencies out there, both on the international and US side. You can find good talent internationally. Oftentimes, like if you have a super tight budget, maybe that is the route that you need to go. However, a lot of those international agencies also, because it's cheap labor, the hourly cost is lower, they require 30 hours a week or more. And so you're often not getting super part-time support. And so it might already exceed your budget, even though you're getting more hours. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, you can find the right fit that way if that's what you need to do. A lot of our clients have had either really bad experiences with international assistants, or they've never had an assistant before. And like they don't want to deal with the communication and cultural changes, right? Now that's a small element of why you might go with a US based person, but that does have a really big impact on maybe how much you need to oversee. And so what I've heard with most people that go international is that they're delegating tasks, and there's still a lot that they have to think through, or like maybe they have worked with that person for 2 years. Now their business has scaled, but now they have all this work that maybe requires higher critical thinking that they don't think they can pass off to this person because they've always just delegated tasks. Your assistant is not going to be a COO. They're not going to be an integrator, but like I still train them and expect certain levels of critical thinking, problem solving, and initiative in their role. And you're often not going to find that when you go the international route, is my experience.
My experience as well. And again, we're not knocking it. There's pros and cons, across the board, but I think you hit on a couple of things. There's the critical thinking, the strategic problem solving. I call it like the next step ahead, where if you're delegating a task, not an outcome, they may be able to execute on the task. But if the task requires another step, like pivot. I did this and then something else came up. It kind of blocks. And there's like not this proactive strategic thinking of what do I do next? How can I do this in a different way? It's kind of stop and then start and then stop, as opposed to, okay, I'm owning more of the outcome. I can see what the next steps may be. Let me think about what may need to be the case to execute on that within kind of reason and supervision to some extent. But I think it comes back to delegating outcomes, not tasks, and having more strategic thinkers, more high level problem solvers, and using more judgment as opposed to just kind of like getting it done.
Yeah. So I always say like we want an assistant that has initiative, judgment, and follow through. And ultimately that then becomes like very proactive support. And you're right. It is like this start, stop again situation that then just becomes like exhausting. Then delegation feels like a to-do rather than like a thing to leverage. You're like, okay, I'll just do it myself. That's a horrible trap we definitely don't want to be in.
No, exactly. You don't want to create more work. The whole idea is to create less work, more fun work, which again, I love the idea of play, not more work where you're having to like, you've delegated some, but then you actually have to spend more time kind of supervising and checking.
And I've also found, again, I'm going to just repeat myself because I love people and like, I'm not knocking it. You can find good support, right? But what I've also found is like that those cultures, whether you go like the South African or Nigerian route, whether you go the Philippine route, a lot of those cultures are a little bit more people pleasing in their support. And I'm like, ask for forgiveness. Don't wait for my permission. Go do it and challenge me. If you think I'm making a dumb decision, especially because I've given you the goals, I've given you the big picture context. If I'm delegating something to you and you're like, but Sam, you actually wanted this, or I did this and I know that this is going to happen. Like, I want that pushback. I think you don't often find those when someone is used to people pleasing too much.
Great point. Tell us about your service. I mean, we've talked a lot about what you provide in this case, or like the idea, but like tell us a little bit more about how you provide your service. Obviously, like I said, you have a virtual assistant company, US based, skilled, trained, vetted, of course, based on your process. So tell us a little bit about more of where people can find your services, find out more about you, your organization, if they're thinking about getting that type of VA level support.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is a great place. Samantha Prestidge, look me up on LinkedIn. That's a great place to start. Also, because like my website, the name of it is not super SEO. I like the name. So LinkedIn is the place to go. I help people that like to be busy, but they want to enjoy that busyness. They want to have fun in their business and they're being bogged down by all these other things. And so we bring that people in that process. We bring that operations kind of mind and strategy to who we might match you with. Do they have the confidence? Do they have the competence and the capability to grow with you? And so that's what you're going to find with us. If you are at that point of like, you no longer want to do these things, you don't want to pass them off to COO. It doesn't make sense for like your project manager or salesperson to do these things. These are truly admin things and like helping you just like have a brain again and like not have a mushy brain.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's get you an admin or executive assistant. Let's make the matching process super easy. We have a short list. A lot of agencies, you have to pay a pretty hefty recruiting fee for them to even go find your person. We've got a short list. So you're paying a much smaller onboarding fee. And then it's like, hey, well, I'll get you someone in like the next 1 to 3 weeks. You'll meet them. We'll get them started and we'll plan out their whole onboarding plan of how do we get them integrated. So you don't have to think that much. We make it super simple. And again, we then stagger and we make it make sense for whatever you've got going on in your business. So if nothing else, just follow me on LinkedIn for super simple, fun content, guys.
I love it. And your model is very similar to ours, right? Where like, again, sometimes our clients, like they may know that they want a COO and they're going to go and find their COO, but they don't know what they don't know about hiring, recruiting, and training the COO. And so when they come into our umbrella, we provide the structure, we provide the framework, we provide the methodology of how to do what we do because we've been doing it. We've got the capacity, we've got the team on place that knows how to do that work. They've been screened, et cetera. It's a match/partnership as opposed to just like, well, here you go. Here's just somebody I found and go and do it. Like with you, it's a similar organization, similar structure where you're providing the support, you're finding them, you're screening them, you're doing all of the things so that they're set up for success, not only in the VA that you're placing, but also for the client to know that they're going to be successful with that other level of support.
You make a good point of kind of like the things that we think through and the questions that we ask. And so I've had clients joke with me. And so now it's my ongoing thing of like, it's kind of like business therapy. I'm like, I'm going to ask the questions you haven't been asked before that make you like, oh, like you think of something new. But the difference is I'm not going to be the therapist that drags out the answer. I will give you the answer, right? So questions and answers all in one, y'all.
I love it. Yeah. And your VA services, are they both part-time and full-time? Is that optional or what? How does that work?
Yeah, so we don't often go full time.
Right.
We have had clients that they grow to the point where they're like, I want to steal this VA from all their other clients and like they're going to go full time. And I'm like, awesome. I'm like so happy that your business has grown to that. But often we'll stop at 20 or 25 hours a week. Now, we do have some clients that like, hey, like they want maybe a 20-hour a week executive assistant and then maybe like 10, 15-hour admin assistant. And so they kind of play with the budget there because there's different rates for that. So yeah, often 5 hours up to 20 or 25. And if you have to go more than 25, you probably need W-2 and you don't need that contractor relationship anymore. And then we'll help our clients kind of figure that out.
Okay. And is the area mostly like ops, admin, kind of back office? Is it also marketing that they could help with, or like other functions of the business? Like where do they fall there?
Yeah, we're generalists. So my only disclaimer is like, let's have realistic expectations for like the role that we're filling here. At the same time, like we're not marketing strategists. So I would say 90% of our clients at some point say, like, can you help me with an email newsletter? Can you help me with LinkedIn? Can you like make this landing page?
Yeah.
And we're like, absolutely. We will not, however, take ownership for maybe the conversion on that or on those things because we're not the strategists. We're really great executors.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some things that I can help strategize with just from my own marketing ups and downs. So I've got some smarts on that front. And I do strategize with clients and with VAs, right? We do skill development and all that. So they can play in all of those buckets. We do podcast editing. We do a variety of things where we can execute on this process and we can play a little bit with the strategy, but we're not going to say like, hey, like we're the podcast editors that are going to make you the top 1% podcast. Like, no, that's not us, you know?
They're a step in the process, but they have to, maybe like a CMO or a COO is going to be more owning the strategy, like what we're doing. And then the VA is a integral part of the execution in order to make that happen.
Yeah. And so strategy is the how we're going to get to this outcome, right? There still lives a lot of execution in between there.
Okay. Got it. Well, if you're a CEO founder listening to this or watching this and you're thinking, I need to get some admin support, I need an ops assistant, VA, check out Sam. I love the way that you talk about what you believe in and how you operate. And I think it's an ideal differentiator, I think, in the marketplace where there's a lot of people offering VA services offshore, US, doesn't really matter. But if you're thinking about getting VA support in your business as a CEO, as a founder, check out Sam, go to her LinkedIn. And in some cases, like I've talked about with you, with our COOs, working with the founder, utilizing VAs where the COO can stay in their lane and they can rely on somebody that is in their lane more and that execution day-to-day level. Check out Sam. That's the idea there.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Sam. This is a really, really great conversation. Thank you for being part of the show. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks. Have an amazing rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon on the COO Solution Podcast. Thanks, everybody. And that's a wrap on this episode of the COO Solution Podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, I'd love it if you could subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to get control of their business and scale it with a second in command that they trust to handle all the daily tasks and operations they don't enjoy. And hey, maybe you're wondering if now is the time to bring on a trusted fractional COO or Chief Operating Officer to help your thriving business scale with clarity and confidence. If you're tired of doing it alone, visit thecoosolution.com and take our free quiz to help determine if now is the right time to bring a fractional COO to help you scale. In just 25 questions, you'll get a personalized report that helps you decide if your business is ready for the game-changing support of a part-time fractional COO. Let's find out together if it's your next step. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work.